Welcome, everyone. You are in the right place to see Clarity Analytics. Our presenters today are Brian Cowles of IMAGINiT and Christina Tully with Shepley Bulfinch. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome to today's presentation. As mentioned, my name is Brian Cowles. I am based in Salt Lake City, here for IMAGINiT Technologies. We're a Platinum Autodesk partner. And today I'm here to talk to you about our product. It's called Clarity. It's a tool we have developed completely in-house to support and expand upon Revit workflows. And today's presentation is focused primarily on how Clarity can get analytics, extract data from the model for people to analyze and make better decisions. Now, there's a couple areas that we'll be talking about, the data that's in the model, like components and parameters and things like that, but also data about the model, file size, open times, Revit build information, things like that. Now, I do need to put out just a quick safe harbor statement. A couple of the things I'm going to talk about today are in development. So that being said, and with IMAGINiT, this presentation may contain statements that are forward-looking, and some things that you may see today may not be in the software ever, but we are, developing this constantly. And most of what we're seeing is already in the software, but there are a couple things that I'm going to refer to that are on our future plans. So, RAND worldwide, we assume no obligation or intend to make sure these forward-looking statements are there except as required by law. So that's just our little legal part here. Again, most of what you're seeing is already in the software, but there are a couple of things that are forward-looking statements, and we just wanted to put a little safe harbor in there. So today's agenda is a very brief intro to Clarity. If you would like more in-depth knowledge about what Clarity does and how it can automate tasks and common workflows within your company, get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to do a full-fledged Clarity demo focusing on the entire workflow. Whereas today, we're mainly talking analytics. So what do we mean by analytics? What kinds of analytics are we collecting, and where are we getting this data from? How can we utilize this data to create project dashboards and really understand the performance impact of certain design decisions in the model and how certain changes over time are affecting the model either positively or negatively. And then we'll look at other aspects, being able to take data out into other tools that you can use to update and analyze your projects and keep your project teams up to date with the performance of these Revit files. Now, if you're not aware, I've just had a couple quick slides for what is IMAGINiT Clarity. It is a web-based or a server-based application that's hosting an internal web page for the company. It sits on your hardware, on your server, and it has some tools that can constantly extract information from Revit. We're able to automate a lot of these processes, and they're being processed behind the scenes. Once this data has been extracted, whether it is, file analytics or something like a file, like PDFs or Navisworks files, it's all stored in one convenient web page. It's very easy to navigate. Anyone can use Clarity. You do not have to have a license of Revit, or you do not have to have an understanding of how to use Revit. All you need to do is have a network connection in some way, whether you're in the office or you can VPN into your network on the go. Everything is done through a web page, through a web browser, and at this day and age, we all know how to browse web pages. So learning Clarity is pretty easy because it's all done through a browser, whether you're on your laptop, your tablet, or your phone, whether you're in the office or taking free Wi-Fi from Starbucks. One of the biggest things Clarity does that helps Clarity pay for itself is automating common tasks. Just think to yourself, how much time are you spending exporting things from Revit, PDFs, Navisworks files, DWGs? How much time are you spending posting files to a shared location like an FTP site or a sync drive like Google or Dropbox or tools like Newforma? How much time are you spending doing these repeatable, time-consuming tasks? Well, with Clarity, you can automate those. anything that you can see on this list to the left, we can set up a task to do this for you. Now, a couple of the things that I want to focus on for today's presentation is we have a couple of tasks that will do model reviews. We have a performance advisor task, and we also have this Revit database export task. These are a few tasks that are constantly scraping data out of these Revit files and creating a series of reports that we can then analyze to see the health and well-being of the project files. Again, if you wanted to see a demo about any of these other tasks, we're more than happy to do that at a separate time. Just get in touch with your IMAGINiT technology sales or account manager, and we'd be happy to arrange that for you. Today's presentation is focusing on a part of Clarity that we've been really focusing on for the last few years, and that's analytics, getting data about the model out. Clarity for many years has really excelled at getting the data that's already in the model, like room finishes, room equipment, parameters from objects and components. We can get that out very easily, but lately we've been really focusing on analytics. And the main process is so that you have something that you can measure and report so that as you move forward, you can make better decisions to optimize your workflows. So as we're talking about Revit and Clarity, we're pulling data about the design. And we've been doing that for a while. Like I mentioned, rooms, room finishes, spaces, door manufacturer information, anything that's actually in the model data, we can pull out. But we're also starting to pull out how people are using Revit, how many warnings, duplicate instances, large families, unused families. We're looking at things like open and sync times. And, then also data about how Clarity is helping your company be more profitable, how much time Clarity is saving your organization. So the types of data that we're collecting, so since 2015, we've been tracking the file size, the open time, the synchronization times. We've been capturing other things like the categories and parameters. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We're also tracking the Revit model performance. Autodesk released several years ago kind of a 19-point checklist to help keep your Revit files running smoothly as much as possible. We're checking all of that, and we're able to report as to which items are failing these types of criteria. Whether you have too large of families, overly nested families, duplicate instances and overlapping objects. We're checking for this and reporting it back. We are also able to get quantities and whatever data is in the model. I've mentioned this before. What furniture, what equipment, what rooms, all the parameters associated with them, and be able to create reports and data sheets showing this information. We also are tracking the task data. So Clarity is running these tasks behind the scenes automatically, and it's just keeping a rolling log of how much time the task server has actually worked for you. So it kind of lets you know, hey, Clarity's done 50 hours of work on this project that you didn't have to do. So that's 50 hours that you could have been working on another project or making the current project even better, better documentation, things like that. Now, as Autodesk has continued to open up some of Revit API, and as we are diving into that and really expanding our tool set, in coming releases, we're able to start analyzing things like number of views, number of sheets, the number of families that are used, number of CAD links, purgeable, hosted, model groups, detail groups. We're going to be able to track, most of this information through Clarity very quickly. Once we've gathered this information, we're able to then start reporting on it and start looking at things like model metrics, how big the file has gotten over time, and where we have some spikes in model open time or model synchronization times, and you can find and identify where these spikes are and maybe realize, okay, maybe we need to go and clean out the model, make a new central file, maybe purge out or audit the file, do a series of things like that. Those 19-point performance criteria, we're able to also analyze these in almost like a stock exchange style look, where we can look at projects and a certain criteria over time and see, how this has affected the model over time. So then we're able to, harvest data. What's happening is we're extracting things from Revit on a timely manner, on a schedule that you set up, how often you want to scrape this data out, but we store it in a SQL database. And once it's in that SQL database, we can create these queries and custom reports and analytics tables from that data. But as we're about to see, once Christina from Shepley Bulfinch hops on, they're taking this data and pushing it into some business intelligence tools. I believe they're using Microsoft Power BI, but Tableau, the data can be mixed with other information you have. So we're really trying to access and get this information into the people's hands that need it. And again, without ever opening Revit, you can get this information. The last thing is, this is something that we've added in Clarity 2017. If you are a current Clarity customer and you want this, this is currently an opt-in only part of Clarity, but we can actually send you a monthly email letting you know just how much Clarity has worked on, how many projects it's ran, how many tasks have ran, how many hours the task server has been working and saving you information and kind of showing you the results of this month compared to last month, all this information here. And as we're going to see with the Shepley Bulfinch presentation, they're taking this data and even pushing it into other systems. So we'll come back to that slide in just a moment. So I'm going to close my PowerPoint and actually jump into Revit just really quickly, because I want to talk a little bit about where this data is coming from, because it does have a few sources that we're pulling this from. On the user's workstations, there is a set of tools here that you can install that is this little IMAGINiT Clarity tool set. And from here, you can do things like launch a task, create a new PDF set behind the scenes. But one of the things we have is in our settings is we are able to send open and sync times, the errors that are in the models, the warnings that are in the models. We're able to send this to the host so that the SQL database that's behind the scenes is tracking these things and keeping an eye on when things start getting a little bit out of hand. So we're just sending this information to the Clarity host. So we can gather it from all of your users if you want, or just certain users. It's really up to you who is sending the workstation-based data. Another set of tools that we have is if I actually go to, you see Google Chrome. Clarity is just a web page, so you open up your favorite web browser and you type in the server name that you installed Clarity onto, and we'll go ahead and log in. Once you've logged in, you have access to all of your project data, all of your model information, things like that. One of the first things that I want to just quickly look at is the tasks. So if I go to tasks, another way that we can start to gather data is through a few of the tasks that we're able to launch, like our Performance Advisor task. If I say a new task, this is that 19-point criteria that Autodesk is looking for. We can say, look for all of this. You can turn them off if you want, but look for all of this in the files. And if we hit any of these issues, report it to us and track that information. Very nice, and you can also set this up on a schedule that fits your needs. So you could say, every Sunday at 1 in the morning, let's get that Performance Advisor list. And, then it's going to run for you just weekly for this project. Other things that we can do is a database export. So this takes all the information from Revit, exports it to SQL, and then we can start to create a series of reports, data sheets, start looking at different model metrics, how the model itself is actually linking to other models in the project. So we're able to kind of automate a good portion of this. So the next thing that I just want to show really quickly is on the Server tab. We have this settings area that allows BIM managers to monitor Revit files. So I can say, check, I believe this is every 4 hours, for the supports files for Revit. So when you have a central model, it's got that that support folder. We can say when that folder hits a certain size, email the team, because that can start causing performance issues. And that may be a good instance where you need to detach and create a new central file, maybe do a purge or an audit and clean it out a little bit so that we shrink this down a bit. If you're having issues with some of your users upgrading their version of Revit and some of their users not upgrading their version of Revit, we can send you an email when your Revit builds have changed. So if one person updated to Service Pack 3, but the rest of the team has not, you get an email saying, okay, one person's out of sync, either, downgrade them or upgrade everyone else, because when you start getting different build changes, it can start to increase the potential for model corruption. So just being able to keep an eye not only on the Revit data, but the overall environment, how big the files are getting, and if people are upgrading their software without you knowing it. We have a lot of tools for kind of monitoring things and the tasks as well. But let's jump into a little bit of the project data. So if I go back to this project, so I mentioned we're able to extract out the quantities and parameters of all the categories in Revit, and these can be created into just a series of reports or data sheets. So I can jump in here, and I'm just going to show one of these. I'll just do a door schedule. These are all completely customizable to contain which category you want, as well as which custom parameters that you would like. So in this instance, here's all the doors in this project, and if I expand it, I can actually start to see the data, manufacturer, model number, the mark, even the wall that it's on. But where the analytics starts coming in is we can use this little tool to show a diagram of this project. All of these little red dots is a door. Now I can take this and say, highlight this information by a certain piece of criteria, maybe manufacturer. It just quickly color codes them and gives me a quick legend of that information. So maybe you don't know how to use Revit, but you're doing a quick code check. You just want to see the fire ratings of these doors. And I start to see, okay, so in this corridor, this hallway, why do we have so many different fire ratings? And I can scroll down and see, oh, okay, well, several of them just don't even have a fire rating on it. Some are 1 hour, some are 2 hour. Maybe we should look at that and move forward. Other things we could use to analyze is if I go to like a room finish schedule and say, show diagram. I can quickly at a glance say, show me all of these rooms color-coded by their department or color-coded by their floor finish. You can kind of see, it's tracking and doing all this kind of very quickly and automatically behind the scenes. We do have data sheets that can track all of the rooms and spaces and furniture and things like that. So if I just pick on a data sheet, just notice here's all of our rooms in the project. You can pick the one you're interested in, and we have an image and whatever data about this. Again, we're reviewing Revit information without ever opening up Revit. Now, let's get into a little bit more about how the file is actually performing, and that's what we're wanting to talk about mostly today. All of this is stuff that's in the file, but when we start wanting to understand how well is the model performing, where we're starting to hit performance issues, maybe what needs to be sent out if we do send this file out to consultants, we have some nice tools for that as well. So first, we have this little model map. This actually will show me the connections between the main file and all of its links, whether they're a CAD link, a Revit file, DWFs, the Keynote files. And if I pick a specific model from my list here, I can see which models are linked and loaded, which ones are linked and unloaded. So I know if I send this out, these are the files that I may also need to include so that we're not missing links when the consultant goes to open things up. And we can kind of analyze this by turning certain things off. And then you can also just click on, whoops, I do want Revit files on. You can also just click on one of these files, the little dot part, and it kind of pops up some information about it. Now, this is just scraping the surface of what we know about these Revit files. If I come over here to model metrics, so we don't do a lot of production here at IMAGINiT. We're more consulting for our customers, helping them get better at production. So you may notice that my model size hasn't changed much over time but I've been trying to do some things that have, really affected my open times. And you see it's kind of tracking, how long it's been taking to open this model, the synchronization times, the model size. I think I have a different project that is, there we go. So this is a bigger hospital project. So you see, we hit a point where maybe during heavy production, the model size went from about 77 megabytes, all the way up to 115 megabytes over this, looks like a month or two span. So, maybe we need to start looking at the size here if this isn't starting to perform quite poorly. We're starting to notice where we had some spikes in our open and sync times. So we're able to review this just inside of this project, and you're actually able to kind of limit down how much we're trying to see here. So I can kind of take this and say, well, what happened just here in this April time frame, and get a little bit better kind of by day results. So these little tools that I've just shown have actually been in Clarity for 3 years now, since the 2015 version of Clarity, and we're now on Clarity 2017. In Clarity 2017, we've added in this area where we have model analytics. And this is where it's really pulling, whoops, let me log back in. There we go. So this is where it's pulling data from all of our projects as the users have been sending that information to the host, as we've been exporting the database and running that Performance Advisor report. It starts to really track this data over time. So when I jump up here, this is currently showing me all of the projects that Clarity is managing over the last 7 days. Again, we don't do a lot of production here, so notice none of our files have changed in the last week. But I'm going to dive into a specific project and change this to all time. And just notice here that I could pick a variety of criteria to start examining. So the one I'm going to show is just file size, but I could look at how long it's been taking to open the file over time, sync times, where we have duplicate instances, where we maybe have large family files, areas with too complicated of a sketch, how many unused families are loaded into the project. So we're looking at, these types of things, and when I hit view, it gives me this information in the same way that like a stockbroker would look at stocks. If you've ever, traded on the market, this looks kind of familiar. If you've not ever traded on the market, basically the horizontal line on the left was the starting point. So notice its initial value was 81.86 meg. Now, the vertical line shows the highest and the lowest value that it hit during that range. So notice that it did at one point, it was a little bit smaller, maybe 1.5 meg smaller, but it also at one point was 223 megabytes. So there was a point where it was a lot bigger than when it started, and the line on the right is its current value. So you see, we did have a pretty big spike in file size, but someone went in and did something to get it back into a more reasonable file size. It's currently 151 megabytes. You can see here that our other architectural model started at 152. At one point, it was 510 megabytes. That file, something happened. Maybe someone loaded in a bunch of junk families that they picked up somewhere. Or they just did some very poor modeling and overcomplicated things. Well, at some point, someone went in and cleaned that out. And you see, we're actually lower than when we started. We started at 152, and the model is currently 119. That's why this bar is green. But you see, the site model, we didn't touch really at all. A little bit. You see, it started at 10, and it's kind of stayed at about 10. Hasn't really changed much. So that one gets a black bar. So again, red means it's been getting worse. Green means it's getting better. And black means it's kind of about the same. It's, negligible. It's within a few percentages of its original values. But again, we can go up here and pick different projects and different criteria that we are wanting to analyze and start to understand where are these problem areas in these models. All right, so the last piece is, if you just notice, other things that we're tracking is when we set up these tasks, notice at the top, I haven't been doing too much on this particular project, but it is tracking when we export PDFs, when we're exporting Navisworks files or exporting this data to fill out the reports and data sheets and model metrics. How much time is the server actually saving you? So like I said, Clarity is a tool that pays for itself over time because it's taking this work off of your shoulders and doing it on the server and then providing you and your extended team with all of this valuable data to start analyzing not only the components and the parameters in the model, but the performance of the model itself so that you can start to identify where problem areas are and go in and start to clean those up. Like I mentioned, we also have this kind of final email that is an opt-in email. If you are a current Clarity customer and you're interested in this, please let us know to opt in and we'll start sending you this data as well. So at this point, I am going to pass the ball over to Christina Tully, who is our special guest presenter from Shepley Bulfinch. Christina, go ahead and take it when you're ready.
Hello. Thank you very much. So as Brian mentioned, my name is Christina Tully. I am part of the IT team at Shepley. My background is actually in architecture, but I am lovingly known as one of the geeks here at Shepley. So the geeks are really the people that are in charge of IMAGINiT here. We are the ones that run Clarity and monitor it. It's not something that the project teams or project managers delve into on a daily basis. We give training on Clarity and we let the project teams make their own tasks, run their own tasks, but keep everything and make sure that it runs smoothly. So to go into a little bit of the things that we're doing, this first tab, to let you know what I'm showing here, we keep track of everything, like Brian was saying, in Power BI. So we link to our SQL server that houses all of our data pulled from Clarity. So we link directly to our SQL server so we can refresh this every day, multiple times a day, and get the most up-to-date information on all of the projects that we have in Clarity. So here's some snippets from our Power BI dashboard. So this first slide is showing something that I created to better keep track of the tasks that run every day. We have quite a few projects and quite a few tasks depending on the day. So this day in particular had quite a number of them when I came in the morning. And it's just a very easy way for us to see all of the tasks that ran and monitor which ones may have errored for the day or completed with errors. And I can go through and see all of them regardless of the project and take a look at what the errors, which task server it ran on, and go take a look much more quickly than I would have going through my email or that kind of thing. In addition to this, we have a growing number of projects at Shepley. So adding new projects into Clarity, it's nice to have one spot where I can come, in our Power BI booklet to look at all the tasks that run in our schedules every day and be able to quickly go through and filter, like, okay, which tasks run on Wednesdays or which tasks are a particular project running and see all of the days that it's running to spread that out a little bit more evenly so we're not having tasks error just because there were too many running at a particular time. This would obviously be much more effective if it were live and on a screenshot, but you get the idea here. And this has been really helpful. So when I say task reliability rates, I'm talking more how our tasks are running per project and on our particular servers. So we have offices across the U.S., and we have task servers in those offices. So this allows us to keep track and see which tasks are running more successfully across our projects. And this gives us a hint as to whether or not our project, or whether or not the model health, should be monitored more closely in particular projects or for particular tasks in general. So, for example, with the Navisworks tasks, there have been quite a few tasks that we've run, but I know that only one project is using this, and we were having quite a bit of model issues with that task. So we have a pretty low reliability rate with this task on that particular project. But happy to say that it's back up and running. It's had 100% lately. So the next part, we're taking a look at all of the models and all of the tasks that we have on our server. So we can keep track of all of the different Revit versions that we have across all projects, past and current. We try and get rid of some of the old projects to keep it as current as possible, but there are some in there that are no longer running Clarity tasks. We're able to filter by project and sort of take a deeper look into how many models and how many tasks each project is running every day. And then taking a deeper look at the tasks, again, we're able to filter per project or just look at all of our tasks and projects as a whole. And one anecdote with this is, so this graph in particular is showing all of the green dots are how the project is performing currently. So if they're sort of in this little, this is a Boston Lister plot. So if it's in this little bar, that means you're in the sweet spot. You want to be in this little box. We had one project in particular where the green dot was sort of all the way up over here, away from where it should be. So we were able to go over to that project and say, listen, your model is running the worst, essentially, that it ever has been. And these are some of the reasons why it's taking so long for you to open the model, why it's taking you so long to do anything in the model. And through the Performance Advisor and Warning Analytics, we were able to give them a list of things that they could go through quickly and get the file size down, open times faster, sync times faster, and really help the project and help the model before it crashed and burned. So, excuse me, now going into the Performance Advisor metrics, this has been a bit of a work in progress for us. There's still some things that we're looking to add. But for what we have right now, the Performance Advisor here is looking at all projects. So we can see those the warnings that Autodesk has outlined as what constitutes a slow model, what errors in your model might be giving you some slow models. So here we're seeing the number of projects affected by each of those errors, and then the number of errors within each of those categories for the project. And we've given sort of a severity rating, so hopefully the graphics are coming through okay, but the sort of lighter red colored ones are ones that we've identified as if you get rid of these ones in red, you're going to get much better results right away. And some of these other ones that are maybe lower priority but will also help significantly. Ideally you get rid of everything, but sometimes it's just not possible. So getting rid of these things and having that as your high priority will help your model perform faster. And here we can dig deeper rather than looking at the errors across all projects. We can filter per project and say, okay, our Princeton model, what's going on today in the model? So we have a significant number of multiple loop and sketch errors that maybe the project team might want to work on. However, I know that flipping is disabled is probably the error that you're going to want to spend more time on if you're having some issues today, because that seems to be something that affects our models pretty significantly. And you can filter through per project and get some overall numbers. So again, digging deeper into just a particular model, this is a separate Power BI workbook that we have that is looking at just one of our projects. And Brian gave you a sneak peek of this slide a little earlier. So here we're looking at, this is a combination of both Clarity data as well as data that we pull using Dynamo. And for those of you that are not familiar with Dynamo, it's a plugin for Autodesk that allows us to sort of manipulate parameters and data and pull data out of the Revit model through a visual scripting platform. And we're able to get that data in Excel and push that data into SQL. So again, this is pulling from SQL, but the data is coming from Clarity and Dynamo. And we're hoping that one day we'll be able to run those Dynamo scripts with Clarity and just get everything all in the same place. So here we're looking at file size, time to opens, and warnings, and trying to see some correlations here. Every time the model is audited or any time that warnings are reduced actively by the team, we have a little signifier here, and then we can monitor the way the model is performing and see if there's any correlation along those lines. And some statistics within the model, you know, families, lengths, groups, just anything and everything that's in the model that may be affecting model health. This is that same project, and again, this is warning error both from Clarity and from Dynamo, so pulling the actual warnings that the user sees and parsing the HTML file and giving a breakdown to the team of the number of warnings per level in the model. So red here, this model is actually pretty great with only having 146 warnings. However, you know, a model this size, even a small number of warnings could have some detrimental effects. So higher warnings, being only 11 or above, are categorized here. And you're able to see it again here, how many warnings are actually per level. And then we're able to give an Excel document to the team with specific warnings, you know, the warning ID, the warning, what the warning is, and break it up either per level or per warning type, or, you know, whatever helps the team most. Yeah, so this is just sort of a sneak preview of some of the stuff that we're doing here at Shepley. This is definitely a work in progress, and we're looking to get some more analytics in here and looking at some more of the stuff that Clarity puts out to us. And that's it for me.
Back to you, Brian.
Great. Thank you very much, Christina. So just in a quick recap, we saw how Shepley Bulfinch is utilizing this data to just get an overall understanding of the health of their projects, not only for the file itself, but specific problem areas in the model, kind of a level-by-level look at different things, and very valuable data that we're able to pull out of this just through the use of our tool. So Clarity can help you extract this data out of these Revit files. Again, whether it's component data, rooms, furniture, equipment, all the parameters associated with them, but also the Revit file data, performance issues, warnings, error messages, problem areas within those files. And with that data, you can help you can manage your people better, manage your models better, have better profitability on projects when you're identifying issues earlier and often. And with us here at IMAGINiT, this is only the beginning. Oh, whoops, didn't want to go forward one slide. We are expanding our analytics as much as we can, as much as Autodesk is allowing us to dive into these things. As they continue to open the API, we are trying to dive in and pull out whatever we can. Now, there is one thing we can do that you could help make this a little bit better. Currently, as of this date, the actual access to the Revit warnings inside of these files, the API for that is not quite available. And actually, one of our developers has put in a Revit idea request. So if you could, if you are part of Revit Ideas, or you're just wanting to search for this through Autodesk's forums, we have put up a request for Autodesk to open up the API access to Revit warnings and errors, and this will let us dive even deeper into finding problem areas within these models. So if you're interested in this and you want to make it even better, please jump on here and vote for this critical item that can really help us and help you find even more data regarding these models. So with that said, thank you very much for your time. Let me get keeps opening on the wrong screen. So thank you very much for your time. If you're interested in more information, you can always go to imaginit.com/clarity or get in touch with your local account manager, and we'd be happy to continue this discussion with you. Jana?
One moment while I end today's recording.